congregation on Facebook Live and on YouTube. I'm Steve Wernick, Reb Steve, one of the rabbis at Bet Tzedek Congregation in Toronto, and this is Conversations Over Coffee, a half-hour, video cast, video pod, video something of just discussing, current events with interesting people around the world. Today's guest is, we're starting with one half of what I would call a dynamic duo, which is Yossi Abramowitz and Rabbi Susan Silverman from Jerusalem. You can see that Yossi has created, as he told me, his COVID garden that's now bearing fruit, and he's sitting underneath his fig tree and his vines and just waiting for Mashiach to come. Yossi, thanks for being with us. And we know that Susan's going to join us a little bit later, but we'll start with you. First of all, how are you? How are you and your family managing COVID in Yerushalayim?
Thank you. Look, on the one hand, we feel like we're the luckiest people on the planet. Jerusalem's beautiful this time of year. We're in good health. We had a COVID scare, actually a kid who was evacuated in an ambulance with all the hazmat stuff. He couldn't breathe, and so took him to the biological unit. They figured out it was a respiratory issue. He got antibiotics and 2 COVID tests just to make sure. So, it's always out there. But Baca is pretty free, and we're very privileged. Hope
we're
you
glad that the scare was just a scare, and we wish refuah shlema, and of course we know for those people for whom it's not a scare, we also wish a refuah shlema for them as well.
Big time. All right, exit from the left, Rabbi Susan Silverman.
Hurrah! Woo-hoo! Who is like back-to-back programs, is what I understand.
But where's Robin?
Robin is unfortunately she's not able to join us today. She has some personal issues with her parents that she's dealing with. She wanted to make sure that I sent the two of you her love, and especially that we made mention of the fact that you and she were, I guess, cellmates. as you were both arrested with Neshot HaKotel, with Women of the Wall, for the crime of wanting to read Torah in public.
Well, we were in a country where it's illegal for Jews to practice Judaism freely.
one of the oxymorons about the Jewish state, and whose Judaism is the Judaism of it. But look, while we're talking about countries, it's like, I wanted to talk first about what you two guys are up to, but tell me about dinner, Shabbat dinner with your famous guests now.
As I say to Yosef, I'm sure Kamala is saying to everybody, "Oh my God, I had dinner with the Abramowitz Silvermans." I don't want to brag.
So she's not only saying that, but when you walk into the main reception in her Senate office, she has a framed photo of the group shot in her home, and it says Shabbat Israel 2017 prominently displayed. So look, we are in Jerusalem, and when famous people like Rabbi Steve Wernick come to Israel, they know they can get a good meal and good conversation. And
well, Reb Steve, he's hard to get here because everybody wants him.
Yeah, indeed. But if he comes off of a sweaty bike trip in the Arava, there are a few people who will take him, but we will.
There are few people who will take me. You might be one of them.
So we tend to give big hugs to be that family in Jerusalem. Now the backstory is that we tend to host pre-COVID decent number of visitors from abroad, and APAC groups, AJC congregations. We have a nice big porch, as you can see. So especially in the summer, it's great. And I guess after they got married, and it was clear that she was going to think about a presidential run, being married to a Jewish husband, Doug, who's never been to Israel, is actually a potential liability. And so right after she was elected to the Senate, they had planned what they called a personal trip, although it was more of a listening tour for them. And to her credit, she wanted Doug to have a Shabbat experience, a progressive Shabbat experience, and not a political dinner. I mean, there are plenty of politicians that she did meet with and kind of did the typical, handshakes and Yad Vashem. But we were so happy to be chosen as
We were
the
the
family.
chosen people.
You were the chosen people. You were the chosen rabbi. And actually, it was very moving when it was time for lighting Shabbat candles. You should take it from there.
So, I'm not a particularly nationalistic person. I mean, I'm a Zionist and I love Israel, but my ideal world would not be one of, ethnic national states, right? But there is one thing that really gets me, and that is that the candlesticks that are in our living room were my great grandmother Ida's, and she fled pogroms in Poland and brought them to America with her. And it's kind of amazing to light those candles like in the sovereign state of the Jewish people. So I think I share that story, I'm assuming.
Right. And future president of America.
She knew
what she was doing.
It
was a beautiful moment. It was really a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that the two pillars of the conversation over dinner were about foster care, particularly in LA, and climate change.
Why would that be the two pillars of conversation at your table?
We knew both issues inside out. I mean, she's from California, and my work in foster care is in LA County, and it was just.
She's from Oakland. I lived in Oakland as a kid for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
My father was a rabbi at Temple Beth Abraham on MacArthur Boulevard. So I still have some friendships to this day from that time for people that lived in Oakland. But tell us about the two of you, because you guys really are the dynamic duo, and in your own ways are doing really powerful things, I think, for changing the world for the better. Let's start with you, Susan. You've started for the last couple of years on really raising awareness about foster care and adoption. And I know that part of that passion comes from your own family and having adopted kids. But tell us a little bit about that journey, and what is it that you're trying to accomplish now?
So I grew up in a family that took in foster kids. So that was something that was up close and personal for me from a very young age, and had a very positive impact on me in the way I look at the world and the need for kids to be in permanent living families. And so I always knew that when I grew up that I would form my family, at least in part, through adoption. And so we did. We've got 5 kids, 3 girls and 2 boys. As I say, we produce girls and import boys. Our sons are from both were born in Ethiopia. And I've always felt like my rabbinate needed to be connected to foster care and adoption. And so I started an organization called Second Nurture. Every child deserves a family and a community. And right now we're working in LA County with synagogues. So we're partnering with synagogues in LA County and helping them to prioritize and support foster care and adoption among their memberships. So we educate the communities, we help the leadership to educate about the issue, about what Second Nurture does, about that if people have an interest in foster care, because about a third of American, this includes Canadian adults, have considered fostering or adopting from foster care, but only a third
have considered it.
If you probably anybody watching this, if you think that, oh, have I ever thought about that? You've probably said I've seen Wednesday's Child, and I thought, oh, maybe we could do that. So many people have considered it, but moving from consideration to action, almost nobody does that. And
it sounds like it's a huge commitment, right? I mean, it's I understand that.
Totally, it is. So what we try to do is bridge that gap by saying, yes, that is a big commitment, and your whole community's got your back. So anyone who's interested, we have someone who's just starting the process right now to foster and adopt a teenager. from foster care, she started joining us as support. She was giving support to other families. So she was one of the people from the wider community who was coming in and supporting the families who were fostering and adopting. And then she was like, hey, I could do this. And so now it's so great to see the other people from cohorts supporting her, right, as she's moving forward in the process. And so nobody's doing it alone. They're with other people who are also exploring or going through the process or have kids home. In our pilot community at Wilshire Boulevard Temple in LA, we have about 20 families in the cohort, and 15 of them, I think, have kids home, and about 7 or 8 of those families have now completed their adoptions. So, so they're in the cohort, they support each other. We bring in expertise based on what people need, and the wider community helps in lots of different ways. So, so that nobody feels like they have to take on this big thing and they're just kind of by themselves. And even in COVID, where families are having such a hard time right now, especially families who don't have completed adoptions and have kids who are sort of betwixt and between in the system right now, are really suffering. And so we are bringing in professionals to really help them think it through, to help them to best orient themselves just as human beings, as in parents in their day-to-day life, so that they can still have like kind of a stable household despite all the upheaval and all the difficulty. And, you know, kids, especially kids of color, Black kids right now who are dealing not only with COVID, but with the Black Lives Matter, you know, movement, like what has fomented that, which is, you know, all this violence, and kids who are between, they need a lot of support, and the families need a lot of support. And so we have that extended throughout the communities.
Why did you start with LA County?
Susan Goldberg, Rabbi Susan Goldberg. I don't know if you know her, but she's phenomenal. So I had been on a book tour, and I was traveling all over the country, and the book tour was really my planting the seeds for this idea that I had. And so I connected with Rabbi Susan Goldberg, and I told her my idea, and she said, this is crazy. 3 people from my Kila just this week, independent of each other, came to me and said, we have to do something about kids in foster care. So it was basically like, she was like, I'm your partner, let's do it.
Right.
And so I started in LA County.
And you have 8 synagogues now, I think you told me that are. And tell us a little bit about LA County. How many kids are in foster care?
About 30,000 kids in foster care.
And how many of those kids are now in your network?
Oh, so I mean, very few relatively. So, oh gosh, I should know this. I'm not the programs person on the ground, but I think we have about like 15 or 16 kids in families right now.
Which represents 10% of.
Yeah, I don't really announce that because I
of
don't want
all
to embarrass anybody.
the. There are very few families in LA County that are taking in foster kids, and so this
We have a very high rate of bringing in families relative to.
So you're increasing the overall rate 10%, which is great in terms of what is current, but is lousy in terms of what the need is.
Yes.
Right? Meaning in the sense of not that, I mean, your 10% addition is great, but that just means that there's so few people that are doing it.
Yeah, it's actually been even a higher rate. Like the numbers for our program, what we're doing are very, very good, but it's a question of scale.
Right.
We need to be able to really, really scale this. But the community model is really effective because people feel like everyone loves belonging. So here you're providing belonging for kids who need it, and you have a even greater sense of belonging ensconced in your community.
Has anything surprised you since you've been on this journey? You know, what do you think are some of the key things that you've learned, and the key messages that you want people to hear?
So one thing that I think is really important is that it's really, when you have a thought like this, when you're considering foster care, just take the first few steps. You know, if you get the support, take the first few steps and see, because this is one of those things in life that I think very few people will sort of like decide from the get-go and then just make it happen, right? It's the kind of thing that like that steps forward bring more light. And then the light, you can see more and take more steps forward, right? And so like engagement in fostering is really how you can learn about it, because you can engage the process and not foster adopt in the, at the end you can stop. But by engaging the process, that's how you're really going to learn, and you're going to feel whether this is right for you or not. And I think in theory, it's actually a lot scarier than in practice. In practice, you might have the same challenges, but you know how things in practice feel doable, right? In a way that things that are kind of haunted in the night aren't.
Where would a person start? Would they start with the Jewish Family and Child Service? Would they start with county services? If one wanted to find out more information, where would they go?
It depends where they are, and it also depends what they want. So, for example, Jewish Family and Children's Services may or may not do foster care adoptions, right? They may or may not do the home studies for the foster care adoptions. Don't know. Sometimes they just do infant adoption. It may be that going to the county really works for you where you live. It may be that you want to choose an FFA, which is a foster family agency, and it's the same basically demographic of kids, but a smaller kind of boutique agency that is outsourced by the Department of Social Services.
But if you know anybody who's in the largest conservative shul in the world who wants to put together like a garin to explore, that's probably the best way to do it.
You let us know who that person is.
I'll see if I can find that person. Speaking about the light.
Can I say one thing is that also easy online, wherever you are, you can go to the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption.
What's your website?
Hold on a second. It's Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption website, and they have all over the US and Canada where you can go, or Adopt Us Kids, which I'm not sure if it has. I think it does have like the Canadian also agencies.
So I'm going to ask Linda from our team to put that website up on our Facebook page. And then what's your website too?
Is we're redoing it, almost done. I'll send it to you when it's done.
Okay, so we'll put yours up once it's done. All right, so now we'll make the transition. Speaking of the light, tell us about the sun, Yossi.
Well, we have about 4 billion years left before it becomes this unbelievable supernova. And, it was created on the 4th day of creation. And from the get-go of creation, the Ma'or Lememshelet Hayom. And since creation, before the first Shabbat, God gave us all the energy we need to power our world. And it's only lately that humanity is rallying to take advantage of this incredible gift.
And you and your partners are like leading the way. Tell us what you've done in the Arava region and what you're doing in Africa, and what it is that you'd like to see happen in the rest of Israel as well.
Okay, well, as you know, we made Aliyah from Boston.
Kodesh, Newton, Massachusetts.
Okay, heretic, Apikoris. And Kibbutz Keturah in the Arava, and we did it in August. It was really, really hot and really, really sunny, and kind of hit with the vision. Wow, let's make this whole region 100% daytime solar by 2020. And that can be a model for Israel, and Israel could be a model for Africa and the whole world. And,
when did you make Aliyah?
2006, August 24th, around the birthday of Haram. We're coming up to our 14th anniversary.
So when did you make that declaration of doing it by 2020? It wasn't.
It was within the first couple of weeks. We set up the company. We
really?
First
you landed on Aliyah and you set up a company a couple of weeks later?
Actually, within a week, I went to Kibbutz Sultan across the street to a lawyer, incorporated the Arava Power Company. Everybody laughed, and no one had ever done this before. But luckily, a lot of friends and family came in with very modest impact investments. And we kept pushing, and it took 5 years, but we built the first solar field in the Middle East back in 2011 at Keturah. And, really proud to say that we're 4 months running 100% daytime solar from the Red Sea to the Dead Sea, including all the hotels and all the kibbutzim. And that's really how to save the planet today.
And so that's the Arva region from the Red Sea to the Dead Sea is 100,000 people plus. Is that what it is?
70 or 80,000, but with a lot of air conditionings in there. So
right.
Yeah.
Right, so where are you in Africa then?
Right. So, but the vision, by the way, is for Israel, and Israel is way behind where we should be. I'm currently trying to fight the entry of Chevron into the Israeli energy market, which will further distort and retard the development of solar. So we're fighting that battle right now. In Africa, what happened was we were building the first field at Kibbutz Keturah, and people started coming from all over the world, developing countries, and said, "Hey, Startup Nation, can you help us?" So we started in Rwanda, and no one had ever done a utility scale solar field there, just like no one had ever done in Israel or the Middle East. And we were very, very fortunate to do the first one, supplying 6% of Rwanda's power. And from there, it's also a for-profit impact model, patient capital, but people should make money. And it's quadruple bottom line, good for investors, good for the environment, good on humanitarian, and promotes the brand equity of the Jewish people and diplomacy of the Jewish state. So now we're in 10 countries. I don't know if you want them all, but most of them East Africa, some in West Africa. And we're currently building, even during COVID, in Burundi, one of the poorest countries in the world, a field that will supply 15% of their power.
What challenges have you encountered in trying to get energy into some of these? Because what you read on the paper is like some of these governments are less than, shall we say, which has got to probably make it more difficult.
You said, what challenges didn't you encounter? Look, we do clean energy cleanly. I used to have above my desk. We're not only bound by the U.S. Foreign Practices Act and the UK anti-bribery. I used to have the Hebrew national sign over my desk that we answer to
a higher authority.
Look, that's why also the finance institutions trust us. I mean, it is important. We come with my kippah, and we kind of have the burden, the privilege, and the responsibility of representing Jewish values out in the field. Look, there's a lot of ignorance. The oil companies destroyed ethics and decision making in a lot of these countries. There's so many issues that are brought about by poverty and wars and famines and pandemics. It's a challenge, but someone's got to do it. It might as well be us.
And tell us about what's going on in Israel. I know that you've been testifying a lot before Knesset committees and meeting with the energy minister and others. What's the goal for Israel and how do you get there?
Yeah, so look, the goal should be that by 2030 we should be 100% daytime, just like we did in the Arava. To date, gas monopolies want to keep a 70% monopoly through 2030, and the current energy minister is backing that ridiculous, expensive, polluting, climate change goal. So I'm not his favorite person right now, and anticipate having a piece probably by Friday in the Jerusalem Post where we're at war. But we're right. We've always been right. We're a third of the price of natural gas and zero emissions. If this country takes on the challenge and says we are going to go 100% solar daytime by 2030, it'll bring $30 billion worth of investment into our limping economy, and will create tens of thousands of much needed jobs, particularly in the periphery where they even needed more. So justice and goodness and light is on our side, but we're up against some pretty steep entrenched interests. You've seen that happen in Canada. We've seen that in the US as well. So public policy is a little bit behind schedule in terms of where we need to be as a species.
where we need to be as a species. That's a tall order you're putting out there.
But if Israel does it, will be like the catalyst. Like, this is a good place to kind of come up with models to change the world, or like a platform. If we can solve it, other people can solve it too, and we'll de-risk it and we'll export it. And I had actually, now everyone's talking about the United Arab Emirates, which is fantastic, but I actually did the training for them on solar back in 2000, I don't know, 8 or 9.
Even before there was an exchange of diplomatic.
Yeah, but that was an American passport. So I do want to say that exactly who we were, but it gave them we call it kisui tachet, which probably has a English interpretation, but I won't try to say it wrong.
Did you wear a kippah then too?
No, so I didn't there. Like, I don't wear it in Nigeria. I don't wear it in Gulf states. I have worn it in Jordan in conferences when we know it's sort of I used to wear it in East Jerusalem meetings, but I don't anymore. Like, it's, but most places I wear it. In America, of course, I wear it, except when I walk into the World Bank headquarters in Washington, D.C. Because we're dealing with so many different, we're dealing with Palestinians as well, but also we're in a couple of tough places where there are, Muslim rebels and other things. But it's weird to take it off in America. I wear it to the White House.
Well, that's not a big deal. I wear mine to the White House too. And who knows, maybe you'll be invited to Shabbat dinner at the White House.
Yeah, well, at least the Naval Observatory should.
At least the Naval Observatory, right?
Yeah. And everything shifts.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
Well, look, as I said to you when we were planning this, clearly this is not enough time for either of these conversations. So we'll find a future moment, hopefully in person in the not so distant future.
God, we miss you.
I know. I miss having. The difference now when I come to Israel is that I'm really more on my clock than I am anybody else's. So I have more opportunity to socialize with friends as opposed to things that are work related. And my daughter's living in Israel. She made Aliyah. She's in Haifa now, and may be relocating to another city in the not so distant future. So it's like I miss her.
Yeah. That other city is Tel Aviv. Let's connect her with our daughter.
Yeah. Our other daughter. Wait, she'll kill us if we don't do this. You can follow Rabbi Susan at Rabbi Susan on Twitter, and I'm Captain Sunshine with a K.
We're Captain Sunshine with the K. Yeah, I know. It took me a while to find you on Twitter. Susan was much easier than you were. Okay, well, I want to thank you both for being here. But more importantly, it's like, not only are the two of you mentioned, but the work that you're doing, I know it comes me'alev, and it's so deeply rooted within our Jewish tradition. And it's just inspiring to hear you talk about it and to see what the outcomes have been on both of these projects. And Susan, we just wish you Hatzlacha Rabbah. May you continue to expand this network and help real people find a loving home and safety.
That I could visit you all the time, and Robin,
Right? Yeah. We'll see from this. We'll see from this if there's anybody who says, I've been thinking about fostering. Maybe this is something we can do.
And to David Matlow, and then the whole Matlow family also, right? They're in your
right. Yeah, the Matlows are all here too. So.
Here too. My inspiration.
Right. We'll be back next week with I think next week is Dr. Stahl, who's a gerontologist and one of the leading doctors of aging and the aged at Mount Sinai. And we're going to talk about what's been happening with our parents and our grandparents during COVID, and very much to Canada's shame of really not fulfilling our values of taking care of our older people. And this, of course, is a very important value in our Judaism, and one that comes up again in the High Holy Days. And I intend to speak about it at length during Yom Kippur. So we hope that you'll join us next week for that. And you can find out all the different opportunities to engage with Beth Tzedek online. The building is reopening slowly, but the synagogue remains wide open all the time. We may be physically distant, but we maintain our spiritual nearness at all times. www.beth-tzedec.org. Thanks again, Yossi and Susan. Great having you here. Thanks, everyone.
Happy contribution that they've got you. Mwah.